The sudden passing of activist Charlie Kirk sent shockwaves across America. In the days that followed, grief and confusion filled public spaces, television screens, and social media feeds. Memorials sprang up in cities across the country, with supporters gathering to mourn not only the man, but also the ideas he championed. His influence was polarizing, yet undeniable. For some, Kirk symbolized strength and conviction. For others, controversy and division. Regardless of perspective, his death created a vacuum that was felt far beyond politics. Even in the realm of sports, and particularly within the National Football League, echoes of this moment began to surface in unexpected ways. In Philadelphia, this emotional backdrop collided with the world of football. Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the Eagles and the man overseeing preparations for the upcoming Super Bowl, made an announcement that few could have predicted. While the league had been no stranger to debates over social justice and activism, Lurie's words carried a different weight. They came at a time when the nation was still grappling with loss, and his decision would intertwine grief, politics, and football in a way that threatened to redefine the season's narrative. The intersection of Charlie Kirk's passing and the NFL's cultural presence was no longer avoidable. It had become the center of national attention. When Jeffrey Lurie stepped in front of reporters to deliver his statement, the atmosphere was tense. Cameras clicked, microphones leaned forward, and the weight of expectation filled the room. Lurie announced that the stadium hosting the upcoming Super Bowl would include a special tribute to Charlie Kirk. A symbolic gesture meant, in his words, to recognize the voices that shape our national dialogue, even in moments of loss. It was a bold declaration, one that instantly placed the Eagles' owner at the center of a cultural storm. Within minutes, headlines lit up, social media exploded, and debates ignited in every corner of the sports world. Supporters of the tribute praised Lurie's courage, calling it a necessary acknowledgement of the impact Kirk had on millions of Americans. They argued that the Super Bowl, with its global audience, was the perfect stage to honor a figure who had been so influential, regardless of where one stood politically. But critics fired back just as passionately. They accused Lurie of politicizing the league's biggest event, turning a game that was supposed to unite fans into a battleground for ideology. Some fans even threatened boycotts, claiming they would turn off the broadcast if the tribute went forward. The fault lines were deepening, and the Super Bowl was suddenly no longer just a championship game. It had become a symbol of America's divide. For the league office, the announcement sparked immediate concern. Officials worried about alienating sponsors, networks, and fans who viewed football as sacred ground, a place where politics should not intrude. Behind closed doors, executives debated whether to step in or allow Lurie the autonomy that owners traditionally enjoyed. The tension between respecting free expression and preserving the NFL's carefully crafted image had rarely been so stark. In the hours after Lurie's statement, the league found itself bracing for a storm that no amount of public relations spin could easily contain. The announcement by Jeffrey Lurie set off a media firestorm unlike anything the NFL had seen in years. Within hours, sports networks pivoted their coverage away from stats and predictions to focus on the controversy. Talk shows filled their panels with pundits, debating whether honoring Charlie Kirk at the Super Bowl was an act of unity or a dangerous gamble. Headlines stretched across newspapers. Talk radio blazed with callers voicing their outrage or support, and social media trended with hashtags that framed the story as either historic or disastrous. The Super Bowl was still weeks away, yet it already felt like the biggest story of the season was happening off the field. Players across the league were inevitably drawn into the spotlight. Reporters cornered them in locker rooms and training facilities, pressing for comments on an issue many were reluctant to address. Some expressed cautious support, saying the tribute represented freedom of expression and respect for loss. Others voiced concern, warning that tying the league's most watched event to such a polarizing figure risked overshadowing the sport itself. A handful refused to comment altogether, clearly wary of being dragged into a debate they could not win. The locker rooms, once safe havens for game planning and camaraderie, had suddenly become extensions of America's culture wars. Meanwhile, former players and retired legends added their voices to the conversation. Some argued that football had always been a stage for larger cultural battles, pointing to past protests and movements. Others insisted the game should remain pure, untouched by the turbulence of politics. Their words only fueled the ongoing frenzy, providing ammunition for both sides of the argument. In this moment, it became clear that the NFL was no longer just responding to a controversy, it was living inside one, with no easy way out. As the controversy deepened, fans found themselves pulled into the heart of the debate. Season ticket holders flooded team hotlines with questions and complaints. Some praised Jeffrey Lurie for his willingness to step into the cultural moment, saying the tribute would give the Super Bowl a historic gravity beyond sports. Others, however, were furious, accusing the Eagles' ownership of hijacking the game for political purposes. Social media reflected this split in stark terms. Threads filled with fans promising to boycott the event sat alongside messages of support and calls for unity. The nation's most popular sport was becoming a mirror of its deepest fractures. In Philadelphia, the division was felt most intensely. Outside Lincoln Financial Field, small groups of protesters clashed verbally with supporters who rallied in defense of Lurie's decision. The stadium, once a gathering place for shared passion, now carried the weight of tension and anticipation. Even ordinary game days leading up to the Super Bowl felt different. Tailgates were marked by political slogans as much as team chants, and inside the stands, pockets of fans debated as loudly as they cheered. The game day atmosphere had shifted. It was no longer simply about touchdowns and rivalries, but about identity and belonging. The symbolic power of the stadium itself could not be ignored. For decades, arenas have been places of unity, where people from all walks of life set aside their differences for a few hours of shared excitement. But now, Philadelphia's stadium was poised to become a national stage for conflict as much as celebration. Every seat, every chant, every silence was imbued with new meaning. As the Super Bowl approached, fans didn't just wonder who would lift the Lombardi Trophy. They wondered what message the spectacle itself would send to the world. Inside the league offices, Jeffrey Lurie's announcement created waves of unease. Executives were acutely aware that the Super Bowl was not just a game, it was the NFL's crown jewel, a global broadcast watched by more than 100 million people. Every detail was scrutinized by sponsors, networks, and advertisers. Now, with the looming tribute to Charlie Kirk, the risk of alienating parts of the audience felt more real than ever. Discussions behind closed doors grew tense. Should the league step in to regulate how teams handled tributes? Or would intervention only make things worse, amplifying the controversy instead of containing it? The sponsors, too, could not ignore the storm. Corporations that had invested millions for 30-second ad spots began to question whether their brands would be caught in the crossfire. A tribute framed as political could tarnish carefully crafted marketing campaigns. Calls from sponsors poured into the league's offices, some urging caution, others pressing for clarity. Advertisers wanted reassurance that the Super Bowl would remain a safe, celebratory event rather than a flashpoint for ideological battles. For the NFL, the pressure was suffocating. The very financial pillars that held up the game were beginning to wobble. Networks broadcasting the game also faced a dilemma. They understood that whatever unfolded on the field would carry symbolic weight far beyond touchdowns and play calls. Producers quietly debated how to frame the tribute, how much airtime to give it, and how to prepare commentators for the fallout. The Super Bowl was not only the most watched sporting event in America, it was one of the most watched television events in the world. Any misstep in coverage could ignite even more backlash. For the first time in years, broadcasters found themselves less concerned with replays and halftime shows and more concerned with the political consequences of what might happen during a single moment of silence. The stakes for the NFL had rarely been higher. The league stood at the intersection of sports, politics, and business, trying desperately to balance them all. Every choice carried the risk of angering one side or another. If they backed Lurie's tribute too strongly, critics would accuse the league of partisanship. If they distanced themselves, they risked appearing cold and out of touch with a grieving nation. And so the league hesitated, waiting, calculating, hoping the storm would pass. But with each passing day, the Super Bowl drew closer, and the questions only grew louder. The NFL, already grappling with heightened emotions and divided opinions, now faces ripple effects spreading into locker rooms, front offices, and beyond. Players across different teams have started to voice their feelings on social media, creating a patchwork of unity, skepticism, and outright opposition. For some, the owner's directive symbolizes solidarity with a grieving community. For others, it feels like an unnecessary politicization of the sport they cherish. This clash of perspectives has also begun to affect preparation for the upcoming Super Bowl. Coaches and analysts worry that the focus is shifting away from strategy and training and toward off-field controversies. Fans, meanwhile, are left questioning whether the big game can remain the neutral celebration it once was, or if it is destined to become another battleground for America's cultural and political divides. Beyond the league, sponsors and media partners are also entering the conversation, calculating whether aligning with or distancing themselves from this decision will affect their reputations. The once straightforward narrative of football as an escape has grown far more complex, and it is clear that the fallout from this moment will extend well past the stadium walls. As the countdown to the Super Bowl continues, the controversy is no longer just background noise. It has become the central storyline. What was once a conversation about team matchups and strategies has shifted into debates on television panels, podcasts, and social media feeds. Players preparing for the most important game of their careers find themselves fielding more questions about politics than playbooks. Reporters press them on how they feel about the owner's directive, and every word becomes a headline. Meanwhile, ticket holders who paid thousands for seats are entering a divided atmosphere. For some, the game now carries added meaning, a moment of shared grief. For others, it feels overshadowed, diluted by controversy. The halftime show, normally the highlight of entertainment, now comes with whispers of whether performers will acknowledge the controversy or steer clear altogether. The tension is palpable, turning a global sports event into a stage where cultural fractures play out in real time. At the heart of it, the Super Bowl spotlight ensures that this story cannot be ignored. Every camera angle, every fan reaction, every soundbite will be dissected by millions. The game itself will still be played, but its meaning has already transformed. The day of the Super Bowl finally arrives. Under the blazing stadium lights, the world's attention is fixed on a single venue. Fans pour in, jerseys proudly worn, faces painted with team colors. Yet, alongside the usual excitement, there is a strange heaviness in the air, as if everyone knows this game carries more weight than just football. Inside, the stands reveal a divided picture. Some fans hold up signs in memory of Charlie Kirk. Others simply clap and cheer, eager for kickoff. The atmosphere is electric, but tinged with unease. The very air vibrates with both anticipation and tension. As the teams take the field, cameras zoom in on players whose minds seem caught between the moment and the meaning. Their eyes show determination, but also the weight of being part of something far bigger than the game itself. Then comes the pre-game ceremony. The silence falls heavy across the stadium, a gesture of respect that resonates with some, but leaves others questioning its place here. For a moment, the clash of opinions pauses, and all that remains is stillness, a reflection of the week's chaos. Kickoff finally erupts, and the roar is deafening. The game begins, yet even as the plays unfold, the underlying story cannot be shaken. Every touchdown feels like part of a larger narrative, Every cheer echoes beyond the field. The Super Bowl has become more than a championship. It has become a cultural milestone. As the final whistle blows, one team celebrates victory, while the other tastes defeat. Yet for everyone watching, the memory of this Super Bowl is defined not only by the scoreboard, but by the storm of meaning surrounding it. The night will be remembered as much for the controversy, the tributes, and the debates, as for the football itself. In living rooms, bars, and online forums across the country, conversations continue long after the game ends. Some speak of unity, of a rare moment when sports paused to honor something greater. Others voice frustration, arguing that the field should remain untouched by politics. For the league, questions linger. How should the NFL navigate the collision between cultural issues and the game? Can it remain a sanctuary of entertainment, or has the line already been crossed? The answers may shape the future of America's most powerful sport. And for fans, this Super Bowl becomes a story to retell not just who scored the winning touchdown, but how a single decision by one owner changed the narrative of the entire season. It is a reminder that football, like life, is never just about the game. In the end, the legacy goes beyond statistics and trophies. It lies in the conversations sparked, the divisions exposed, and the emotions stirred. This was not only a championship, it was a cultural moment that will echo through NFL history.